Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 409. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing on this Tuesday evening?
Doing all right. Chilling out, relaxing, maxing, all cool.
Well, that is certainly a good thing. And I'm happy to hear that you are relaxing, all cool. But we're not here to talk about that. We're going to talk about, the NBA. We'll talk about some things and some players and some teams, and it'll be a great time. I have no idea what we're going to talk about. We're going to figure it out as we go along. I do have an idea. I'm lying, but it's a surprise to Stacy. Before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The very being that the Strickland has Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strickland on Instagram. We are posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and haven't done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merch, which you can find on our website at www.thestrick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. You can find all kinds of cool stuff on there. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. And the Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier. That gets you access to Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday with the Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our new podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There is a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland All My Solo pod, right? Rant and everything, and more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Moreno, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, which you guessed it is our podcast that is hosted by Konstantin Metrikos. He just dropped an episode last week where he discussed the state of the New York Giants roster, which is not necessarily pretty for many people, but it is
for me.
It is pretty for Stacy. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. That's going to a variety of additional benefits, like listening on part recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially going into the podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline. The game starts here. Look, I don't care about the NBA Finals. Porzingis is hurt. He might play. He might not play. I don't know. We'll fucking have to find out. We'll find out tomorrow night if he does or not.
Can you say Schrodinger's Porzingis 3 times?
Schrodinger's Porzingis, Schrodinger's Porzingis, Schrodinger's Porzingis. I guess I fucked up the third one. Whatever. I don't think it's that hard. Anyway, we'll talk about the finals, I'm sure, at some point. But I don't want to start with that because nobody cares about that shit. That is not what drives discourse. What drives discourse is the Los Angeles Lakers. And they have had a week. They've certainly had a week, all in less than 3 days. They've had a week. Last week, we found out that no, they were not on the verge of hiring JJ Redick. In fact, they were waiting patiently for a track to explode on. And
will Zach Blatter get that reference?
No, he
what
will
are the odds there?
That. No, 0% chance. That song came up before he was born, and there's no way he bothered to listen to it. They were waiting patiently to make an offer for Bobby Hurley, and he was their number one target, and they were going to offer him 8 years, $100 million, and blah, 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 blah. And Woj did his song and dance, and at the end of it all, Bobby Hurley decides to stay with UConn, chasing a three-peat. I guess they offered him at the end of it all. They offered him 6 years, $70 million. Would have made him one of the top 6 highest paid coaches in the NBA. But this now leaves them in a state of limbo. We're 2 weeks out, I believe, from the NBA draft. We're about 3 weeks out from the start of free agency, the NBA offseason. I don't know, like. I don't know. I guess first of all, you're a UConn fan.
No,
as much as you're a UConn fan.
I'm a Michigan fan.
You're a Michigan fan, but you care about UConn. Come on.
I care about UConn because my sister, but I grew up a Syracuse fan, so I got some complicated. I know it's always difficult for me with the Eagles. You're like, oh, are you an Eagles fan?
Yeah,
I got some. I got some. I am a. I am
got a lot of demons here.
No, I'm. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I guess just look. Okay, you're a
UConn sympathizer.
Yeah, you're a UConn ally. Let's put it that way. You're an ally of the program, even though you're Syracuse and whatever. Who cares? The point is,
I stopped being a Syracuse fan after.
Yeah.
I went.
Well,
to
yes. What did you make of all of this? As I mean, I guess from the UConn perspective, it's great that Bobby Hurley's coming back. But were you really worried at one point that he was going to leave for the Lakers? Because I think when it initially got reported, I was like, oh, maybe they're going to that would be an amazing hire. And it sounds like maybe it's right there. But I mean, Woj even said it, I think on Thursday or Friday it was. But he basically said hey, he's going to take the weekend. They're going to talk. And I think on Sunday, he mentioned before the game, so before game 2 of the NBA Finals, he was doing the studio show, and he dropped in there that Bobby Hurley was going to make his decision official the next day. For me, when he said that, and just the way it had all kind of unfolded, I was pretty confident he was going to go back. And even after I think he initially reported it last Thursday. Entering the weekend, I was just like, I don't know. I don't think he's going to go. But where were you with that?
Yeah. When the initial reporting came out, I thought it sounded like a done deal. But I was like, is this the right move for him? Because, he is a god at UConn. He won 2 straight championships. And somebody posted this. Over the last 2 tournaments, the closest game they had was a 13-point win.
Yeah.
Over Miami, Florida. It's not just that they've won these 2 championships. They're dominating, which goes both ways because you can see it in the sense of he's accomplished everything he can. I mean, a three-peat is a three-peat. I don't remember the last time anyone's done that. I think
that's probably UCLA. It's probably UCLA.
It's UCLA with
yeah, probably
one
Kareem or Bill Walton. Yeah, one of the Hall of Fame centers.
50 years and just legendary players. But beyond that, it's also you're leaving where you're God. And I think there's a mitigating factor there. It's if Dan Hurley went to the Lakers, failed, it's not like every college team wouldn't be trying to swoop him up, right? Yeah. So from that standpoint, if it's way more money, if he's accomplished everything, and this is an ambitious guy. This is a guy who's climbed multiple ladders. He started out, I think, at Rhode Island, or I think even lower level. He went from high school.
St. Anthony, right?
Yeah, he was at high school. He went to a lower level program than Rhode Island first. Sorry, if you have it up there, then I don't want to leave them out. But a team that hadn't won many games, and then they went to winning 20 games. He was at
just to kind of lay it out. He was at St. Anthony's or St. Benedict's Preparatory School. Then he was at then he was at Wagner College for 2 years. Then he was at Rhode Island for 6 years, and then he went to UConn. So he's definitely worked his way up for sure.
And at Wagner, before they got there, I think they were in 7 or 8 games a year. He turned them into a 20-win team within 2 years. So he's
25-6 his last year there.
So he has been.
He's only there for 2 years, by the way. So incredible turnaround.
Yeah, and so it does. I hate to bring this back so much, but it does remind me a little bit, especially since it was LA. It does remind me of the Harbaugh situation, and to a lesser extent, to the Beeline situation, where at the time, with Harbaugh, I had seen that the guy's gonna go. He lost the fucking Super Bowl to his brother. He's the most competitive guy you'd ever meet. It's also Hurley is also from a family of college basketball coaches, right? His dad was a coach. His brother was a star player at Duke and is also a coach. It seems that there would be a competitive spirit there. And I do think that if Hurley gets the opportunity in the future for a better situation, he would take it the same way Harbaugh did. But Harbaugh also passed up on multiple opportunities. He passed up on the Vikings last year who did have a franchise quarterback, maybe flawed, but I think Kirk Cousins is pretty good. With an organization where he had ties to. So they wait for the right fit. And that was kind of my takeaway. And I think that, they mentioned, someone mentioned this today. I forget who it was. It might have been, I don't know who mentioned this, but the Lakers' job, one, he wasn't, if you adjust, even just, you said top 5, you adjust for cost of living and taxes, it's not, it actually works out in favor of staying in stores. And that's without the fact that, as you've mentioned before, we talked about this last pod about should the Knicks go for LeBron, you have to deal with.
We're going to talk more about that after all this, so don't worry.
You got to deal with all his bullshit, right? And it's a tough thing to come into because the org is probably telling him, don't worry about LeBron, but also if he's there, you have to worry about LeBron. That's an extremely tough situation to navigate as a coach. And
you also have to consider, though, he would have had the opportunity to work with their really promising young core of Austin Reeves, Max Christie, and Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Yeah. So to say the least, they would have really had to give him a carte blanche slate. That's not even close to the right way to use those two phrases.
Carte blanche.
Well, it's carte blanche or blank slate. Either way, you have some combination of those two. And like the Lakers have no precedent of that. And it made me think that that is what everyone said about the Knicks and Michigan before Harbaugh took that job. Everyone said about the Knicks, why would you want to take this job? Yeah, you beyond the legacy thing about maybe you can bring a championship to the Knicks. They switch coaches every 3 years. Their roster is in shambles, and their ownership has not been very coach friendly, to say the least. All of those things are working against the Lakers right now. And Michigan and the Knicks got lucky that they found people who were very Harbaugh. They were fucking lucky that the guy went there because he could have taken any other job. Let's be real. He went there and he had that loyalty. Tibbs had that relationship with Leon Rose, but also he had been a coach for the Knicks, grew up in Connecticut. Shout out Connecticut. And I think the Lakers might need to just get lucky with that because to the kind of agnostic observer to all of that, it is not the same job that you think it is. And if you look at historically, all of their coaches had either prior precedent where they like Riley played for the Lakers. Phil Jackson was
Phil Jackson
already, right? He had already won with the Bulls.
He already won 6 championships. He was basically had retired. He hadn't retired. He had stopped working because, as we saw in The Last Dance, the Bulls were like, "Fuck you, we don't want."
And he got to work with Shaq and Kobe,
right?
I mean, Kobe wasn't Kobe yet, but he was still a very promising player. And he got to work with Shaq. Without Kobe, that's not a knock on Kobe, by the way. It's just that was Shaq. You got to work with him. It's different than working with 39-year-old LeBron. So I think that the Lakers, like the Knicks, are coming up to the reality that and the Knicks adapted to that, right? We adapted to that by finding a guy who still bought into that a little bit.
It took 20 years, but we finally got there.
And could coach. They're going and maybe they need to realize that somebody who's bought into the novelty of the Lakers isn't the right thing. Maybe you need to find someone on a lower level who's not as valued. But I think that's a big takeaway. This Lakers job, you think it's the marquee job in the NBA. And if you make it, it is. If you win a championship as the Los Angeles Lakers, that is, I won't even lie about that. That is the preeminent, that is the Real Madrid. That is the New York Yankees. That is the Cowboys, I guess. That pains me. Sorry, Giants fans.
NFL is different though.
That's I empathize with you, Giants fans. But if I had to gun to head pick one, it'd probably still be the Dallas Cowboys. But that is that job in theory, but in reality, it ain't. Especially if you have a really good alternative.
Yeah, and I think the Lakers' job just not being particularly, I mean, look, it's just not that good.
And LeBron is a fucking negative factor there. I'm sorry, I have to say that.
Well, I think LeBron's its own thing because it's he's turning 40 this season. Turns 40 in December 30th. So he's turning 40 this year, which on its face, like obviously for 99.9% of NBA players, they'd be completely fucking terrible now. But LeBron's a freak, so he's still very, very, very fucking good. So like, yes, LeBron's really good still, but you're always wondering in the back of your head, like, all right, he's, maybe he's the guy that can defend, or sorry, can outlast Father Time, but you know that window is not long. All right, so that's one thing right there. That as good as LeBron is, you don't know how long you got with him, and really, you can't really build with. It's very hard to be like, hey, we want you to build out our young core and establish this development program, and we want to build this all out and give you time to kind of establish and establish yourself here and all that type of shit, and then also like you have to try to win because we have LeBron. It's a very hard thing to thread the needle there. Obviously, the other part with LeBron is that he comes with all kinds of LeBron bullshit, right? All the off the court stuff. Every year he's gonna cry about, he's going to drop cryptic comments about players that he would have loved to play with, or blah.
He's also just a bad evaluator.
He has a bad evaluator talent, which we already know from, very clearly from the Russell Westbrook trade. But you had to deal with all of the political machinations that come with LeBron James and Clutch and all of that. You have a front office, which I would say is meh at best. They've done a decent job, I would say, since the Westbrook trade, but like the Westbrook trade was kind of their nail in the coffin. I don't think that's all on the front office, very obviously, but
I think they draft well.
Yeah, they have drafted well, but they haven't really drafted well as much recently. They seem to do well in the margins. It's all very weird. They're not terrible. They're not the worst. They're not the worst, but they're not amazing either. So you have that, cool. And then you have an ownership, which quite frankly is not very competitive compared to the richest owners in the league.
Well, that's that came out today too, right? Is the Buss family able to?
It came out. They got reported today, but that's been obvious to anybody that's been paying attention, and it's just been a fact for a long time. These fucking guys applied for the PPP loans during fucking COVID. Like, which
is that absurd. Really a money thing, or is that just kind of
no? It's revealing of both. It's revealing of both. This is their only business. For the Buss family, for Jeannie Buss, this is their only business. The Lakers are their business. So, like you're not, I still think the Lakers, given the fact, the revenue they drive and all that type of stuff, they're still going to be very they're going to be more competitive than a lot of teams when it comes to financials, but they're not in that, oh my God, they're always going to just spend way more than everybody else on all the uncapped areas of the league and all that type of stuff. It's just not real. They don't do it. You have Anthony Davis, who's still a great player, but like, he's a big guy. He's 30, 31, whatever the fuck he is. He's entering kind of the years where you're going to expect him to maybe not maintain the level of performance he's had over the last 2, 3, 4 years. He's probably entering a phase of where he's still going to be really good, but it's probably going to decline a bit. You're asset poor. You don't have a lot of flexibility when it comes to making moves in free agency, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got all of this stuff that is just there, and it's part of the job if you take it. And for Hurley, like he can be picky, because if UConn, they lost what? They're losing 3 guys from this team that were really good last year. Klingon, Castle, and
have an insane recruiting class and transfer class coming in.
Yeah, so. But who's the third guy that I'm forgetting that they lost? Klingon, Castle, and there's one more.
The point guard, Tristan Newton.
Yeah, there you go. He was an All-American. So you're losing these 3 guys, and maybe you said they have a great recruiting class and a great transfer class,
and they kept Alex Caravan, who's guy would have wanted for the Knicks, but
yeah. So all of these things, like maybe even let's say next year he goes back to UConn, but they lose in like the fucking Sweet 16 or Elite 8, whatever it is. I don't think that's going to affect his stock almost at all, because he's already established himself at such a high level.
I don't think he bombed out as the coach of the Lakers. It wouldn't affect his stock, Like he could still go back to Kentucky. Kentucky would fucking.
He could go back to college, but it will always affect your stock in the NBA, even
That's
if
fair.
people understand the Lakers are a shit show. So I think he can be picky about like, hey, you know what? As awesome as being the head coach of the Lakers is, and how that still is, it's one of the marquee franchises in the NBA. It's the marquee franchise in the NBA, I would say, and one of the marquee franchises in all of sports. It's just, I'm sorry, like I there's just too much going on. It's just not the right time for me. He's allowed to do that. For the Lakers, I don't think this is anything short of like a disaster. Because, and I'll say this, like, I saw Lakers fans yesterday being like, "Oh my God, if I'm LeBron, I want to get the fuck out of here because this is such a mess." And my initial reaction to that was like, "Man, I don't think LeBron cares that. Like, I don't think it matters if they got Dan Hurley or didn't. Like, I think he's staying one way or the other." But now, like, all the reporting, and maybe the reporting will end up being wrong, but all the reporting seems to indicate like they're kind of in limbo here as far as their coaching search. They don't have anybody they're quickly moving on after, this attempt at Hurley. And if you believe Shams reporting, the Hurley thing was almost like a Hail Mary.
Do you think they're like cold on JJ Redick now?
I don't know. Like, I don't. The thing is, like, if I'm JJ Redick, look, I'm still going to be interested in the Lakers job. But now I'm also like, hey, like, look, we don't know what the reality was behind the scenes, but the reporting, and Shams is a clutch guy. So you would think that there's something, he would have some knowledge given LeBron and the Lakers and all that type of stuff. If you believe Shams reporting, like, they were pretty close to hiring. Like, they were right there. They were about to hire JJ Redick. And then, then this Woj bomb dropped last week about Dan Hurley. But it's like, if I'm JJ, I'd be like, wait, we were like right there apparently. And then you just totally pivoted into a totally different direction, by the way. Like, just out of nowhere, we're just going for Dan Hurley. And that's, I don't know. Like, I don't know where JJ is at with that. And honestly, look, I don't think losing.
I don't think he would turn them down.
Yeah, and I also don't think like if he did turn them down, I don't think that's necessarily going to be like, oh my God, we didn't get JJ Redick. There's still opportunities to hire quality coaching candidates that are out there. James Borrego is still out there, although I do think that he's going to be the next Cleveland Cavaliers head coach.
Johnny Bryant.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere now. Mike Inori, the guy, the lead assistant for Minnesota, who coached them to kind of the victory in that series against Denver. Like, there's always going to be qualified candidates out there. We've seen this, numerous times in the NBA, but the optics are not good. And more than, forget what it looks like to me or you, but if you're a coaching candidate, right? If you're a coaching candidate that, let's say you've had multiple, interviews with other teams and you have interest and you know that you're well thought of, are you sure that you want to go to the Lakers right now? But because they look like a mess from the outside looking in, and then they're not, like we talked about the LeBron of it all and all this shit that the limited assets and blah blah blah, all that stuff's a factor too. So I don't know. Like, I guess where I'm at though is, as this is obviously a disaster for the Lakers right now, or just at least, like, if you want to say it's not a disaster, it's just a really bad look. I agree. I think it has now opened the door for potential disaster scenarios. And that disaster scenario being LeBron James either leaving in free agency or opting in and being like, hey, get me the fuck out of here. I want to go to X team. And we literally talked about this last week, and I don't even know if I let you get a sentence out. I was like, no, get the fuck out of here. He's not going anywhere. I don't feel that way anymore. Like, I still think he ends up.
But you also thought he would just be not worth the headache.
Yeah, but like, I still think that he ends up going back to LA. But I do think that now it is not the sure thing I thought previously. And more than that, I think there's a genuine chance he could leave. Like, I did not think I would be here a week ago And I don't feel like I'm overreacting. Like, I do think this Hurley thing, it's not that you missed out on Hurley, it's how it all went down, how it like came out of nowhere. And then, the part that I think if I'm LeBron, that would be like, what the fuck is, look, you want to get this guy out of stores, out of UConn, out of this program that he's turned into the preeminent program in the NCAA and a powerhouse that is obviously, has won back-to-back titles in historic fashion. Like, if you want to go get him and you have Woj leaking, hey, it could be an 8-year, $100 million offer, like, then you come in at 670. I don't know, man. If I'm him, like, alarm bells would be going off. I'd be like, wait, that is a pretty big difference. That is a pretty big difference. And I would be worried about the financial stuff there in the background. Like, hey, are we actually willing to compete? Because I know it's going to take some time for everybody to get used to these new coaching contracts, like the new standard there. But you've got, like, Golden State. I think they gave Kerr 2 years, $35 million extension. Popovich got whatever the fuck he got last year. It was like 5 years, $80 million. Spoelstra got an 8-year, $120 million contract. And by the way, the Heat are not, like, they're also a pretty, they're very budgeted. Let's put it that way. So the fact that and obviously Spoelstra is the best coach in the league, like, but they ponied up, right? They didn't let it get to a place where I was like, oh, I don't know. That's not like, they made a very, very competitive offer. They blew out the industry standard, right? You got a fucking team like Detroit, which they went crazy, obviously, in paying Monty Williams what they did, but they might even be willing to bite that bullet to hire a new coach. And that's the Pistons. That's, they're not driving revenue like that. So when you see stuff like this and it all kind of, you just kind of get a lay of the land, and we know LeBron James, the master politician, is definitely clued up on the lay of the land and as far as the NBA is concerned. I think you would look at this and be like, okay, we don't have stability. We don't have ways to add high-end talent, really. We don't have a coach right now, and maybe we don't pay top dollar in the areas of the league where there are no ramifications aside from the owner's kind of wallet. Like, I would be, I get it. Like, you made a lifestyle choice in a lot of ways going to LA. His kids are there. He's building a huge fucking house and all this stuff that Windy will go on and on about. And I do think that, like, I don't buy the idea that he doesn't care about winning anymore, but I do think he had made some peace with, like, all right, even if I don't win in LA, which I would like to do,
my legacy is intact.
Yeah, my legacy is intact, and I'm putting, the organization's trying to win and blah, blah, blah. I would be a lot less secure about that. Not as far as his legacy. To me, LeBron's legacy is secure as
he's number 2 of all time. I don't think it's going to change either way.
Well, we can get to that. We'll get to that. But for right now, his legacy is very, very secure, right? He almost consensus is that he's either the best of all time or the second best of all time, right? So, like, it's a very secure legacy. Yeah, like a very secure legacy he has. So that's not the part. But, like, the part of, like, hey, I still am really good, and I still want to, like, at least feel like I'm part of an organization that has a chance to win a championship or is competitive in trying to work towards that. I mean, this week would have dented a lot of my confidence if I'm LeBron James.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough with the 30. I mean, the Patriots had to make that decision, right? The Bucks had to make that decision. It's just tough when there's so much. Every year they're uncertain. It's not like, is he going to be there 2 or 3 years? That downfall could come any year. He's still a top 10 player, which we don't probably talk enough about, which is insane. And, like, when he's really locked in, he's as good as anybody. He is as good as Luka Doncic. He's as good as Jokic. I still believe that. Like, when he's actually locked in,
I don't think it's as good as Jokic. I think we've seen that over
in
the last
like that 3%
for like 3 minutes of a game, maybe, but he can't dial it up.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, he can get to that level, which is still, how many guys can get to that level even for 20 minutes a game?
So what, like
him, Jokic, Kawhi, that's it.
Jokic, Kawhi,
Luka, no one else.
Maybe
I love Jalen Brunson. He can't.
Maybe Hartenstein. Hartenstein, maybe
Some guy named Hartenstein.
some guy named Hartenstein. I pay him $200 million. Apparently,
So
teams are just lining up the $200 million offers for Isaiah Hartenstein.
it's also we should recognize that it is so unprecedented, though, right? Like,
yeah,
it's who he is now, and then the uncertainty, even short term, is so high. And it's tough to build around a guy like that. So I give the Lakers a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, there, but it's also every team has had trouble building around him, right? Like, we value longevity for a lot of these players because Kobe should have been more difficult to build around than LeBron, right? He was more ball dominant player. He stayed with the same team his whole life, and his whole career.
I would argue Kobe was less ball dominant than LeBron by a lot. Actually, that's what I would argue. I don't think
higher usage. I think, right?
Yeah, but usage is come on. He's getting usage in the.
You're talking about time on ball. That's fair.
Yeah,
I point guard,
and not just that. Like LeBron could never have thrived with bigs like Pau Gasol. Like it just wouldn't happen.
He's thrived with Chris Bosh.
He would thrive.
Chris Bosh is the closest thing.
He would thrive. LeBron would thrive, but those guys have to sacrifice playing with LeBron.
Which Bosh did. That's fair to say.
Pau put up career numbers with Kobe. Shaq put up career numbers with Kobe. Like, and I understand Shaq is obviously all time, potentially like his top level is as good as anybody's top level in NBA history. But I don't think
Bynum also put up.
Yeah, Bynum. Like I don't when it's as the great philosopher George Bush said, "Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, can't fool me again." Like when
I don't think it was quite that elegant, Shwin, but
but when you have obviously there's multiple bigs here. Anyway, the point is I don't. But anyway, we don't need. This is very off topic.
I'm just saying he's a very tough player right now, and I think any player, I included Brady there, right? I think when the Knicks are looking at some of these guys, Butler, if they could somehow trade for Kawhi Leonard, beyond the injuries, even that, you don't know when the shoe is going to drop because Father Time's undefeated. So that makes it a more complicated situation for the Lakers. But I also think that like it is kind of a sign that like the Lakers, the Knicks, the Celtics, the Sixers, these big market jobs are not exactly like the legacy. Like this happened, Bill Simmons, when I still used to read him, wrote this article when LeBron
you can't read him anymore because he doesn't write.
That's a good point. When I still used to pay attention to his thoughts, he wrote a really good article when LeBron was in the decision in 2010. And, he said, if you want to, he didn't even list Miami as one of the three destinations in his article. But he said, if you want to win, then Chicago is the best place at that point, right? They had Derrick Rose. They had a coach named Tom Thibodeau, you may have heard of, who is very, great pedigree.
Had a lot more hair.
Really good team around him. They had Noah at that time, I think. I don't think Noah was quite Noah yet. They had a really good supporting cast, and they had a number 2 for him in Rose. He said, if you're interested in loyalty, then you go back to Cleveland, obviously. And if you're interested in immortality, you go to the Knicks, right? Because if you win a title in New York, that's when you're rivaling MJ. And, there were a million things that went into that decision. I think it's fair to say LeBron made the right decision. But, I think that was like the last 20 years, really, or 25 years, whatever you want to call it, have been a wake-up call to Knicks fans that, like, that cachet is a thing, but it is not as much of a thing as it has been.
It's not a thing on its own.
Yeah, and that is coming for the Lakers now, which is not to say that, like, and the Knicks adapted. The Knicks, we've talked about this, the Knicks have built, like, a small market team. Their superstar they found as a guy that another team didn't value. And they paid him like is it fair to say Jalen Brunson is paid like a role player?
He's paid like a very high-end role player.
Yeah, he is not a high-end role player. Spoiler alert. He is an MVP candidate, right? Isaiah Hartenstein was making $8 million a year. Julius Randle is paid like a high-end role player. Is that fair to say? Which maybe you think that his value is equal to that?
I mean, I would say they're both paid like top-end starters to some, like they're at that top-end high caliber starter, but
they're not playing
star.
like guys who would touch all NBA.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and like, I guess for the people who want to trade Randall with 4 first-round picks for Michael Bridges, that's a fair pay. The point is, the Knicks have built they drafted well. It all started with how they drafted, right? They got OG because they drafted well. They traded 2 draft picks for OG. And I think that the Lakers and the Lakers got here in part because they built like a small market team. They drafted Lonzo, they drafted Ingram, they drafted a guy named Josh Hart, who you might be familiar with. They drafted Kyle Kuzma. And then they traded all those guys, of course, and we can debate the merits of that. But the point is, you have to get back to that at this point because you cannot just rely on signing star free agents, which is part of the reason why I get so fucking mad when I hear the small market fans whine that it's all rigged for us. It's not. There is a little bit of cachet, but we still have to build the same way as everybody else. And that the Knicks did that successfully, and the Lakers are going to have to turn back to that, even maybe now during the LeBron era. But that is the reality that you can't just get guys because you're the Lakers anymore. You can't get guys because you're the Knicks. So
You also just the free agency sucks, but it's very hard to get guys in free agency unless you're the Knicks, apparently. But this is all a good segue for an exercise I wanted to do today, which is let's find the ideal landing spot for the top free agents in this year's free agent class. And we're not going to count like Tyrese Maxey, who's 1,000 billion% going back to Philadelphia. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, he's not going anywhere.
are we
So,
quickly?
We can if you want. I personally think it's very unlikely that he goes he leaves, but it's possible. So we can include it. But we're going to go down the list, and we're going to start with who I think, it to me was a free agent in name only, but not a real free agent a week ago. But now I think might be a real free agent, even if he opts in. I think he still has leverage to get traded because he's LeBron James, and that's just how that stuff works. It's LeBron James. What is the best place for LeBron James to go? And I mean this, from however you want to interpret it. How about that? It can be for basketball purposes or whatever you think is the best thing. But I think there are 2 options for him, and I think they're both very good. And I think they both happen to be in the East, and they both happen to be in the same division, and they both happen to be teams that faced off against each other in the first round this year, which are the Knicks and the Sixers. Like I do think that these are probably his 2 best options if what he wants to do is to continue to compete for championships. Now,
so we're not taking cap space into account, really, right?
Yeah, I mean we can. Both of them have feasible ways to acquire him. Obviously, the Sixers because they have cap space. They have up to I think they have 60 million plus, or the Knicks who they can combine salaries and acquire him in trade if they really want to. I don't know. So I'll throw it up to you first. And feel free if you think that I'm leaving out a team that would be an even better fit for him. But
even better is tough. Are we just ignoring Oklahoma City?
You don't have to if you don't want to.
So on the one hand, just how ball dominant Shea is, and the fact that he's not really proven himself as this off-ball point shooter, it makes it a little tough. But boy, if you got Chet at the 5 if you're playing 5 out with LeBron and Shea,
yeah.
And
LeBron deserves credit for this. He talked about he worked on his shooting mechanics.
He shot 42% from 3 this year.
His 3-point shooting was excellent this year.
And he probably doesn't want to bang in the paint as much as he has. So having a guy I think that's an attractive thing about the Knicks is that he wouldn't have to drive as much if he's playing next to a guy like Brunson. That's why Kyrie
and the Sixers for that matter.
Yeah, with Maxey, right? So I think we talk about you want LeBron in space, but you also don't want him going into the paint 20 times a game or driving 20 times a game. So I think Oklahoma City absolutely should be up there. If San Antonio can pull off some crazy summer where they also get another guard, I hate Trae Young as the guy here, but if they get a Trae Young, if they get they can get a Levine. If you have to project Wemby taking another leap, But also, if you look at his fucking DPM, there's no slope there, Shwin. It's a fucking undefined slope.
Wow, getting real nerdy over here.
I'm
Right?
fucking mathy, baby. That is.
You want to explain to people what an undefined slope is?
I think. Well, the point is that it went straight up. It's straight up, right? So if you have a slope that's a little bit this way, then you can say how much did it move up for this much. But if it literally doesn't move this way, it's just straight up, is undefined. And Wemby just was like, "This is where you're supposed to be as a rookie," and oh nope, we can't even count the time that's passed because we're just off. I guess the Suns would be attractive to him. I don't think they have any way to make that happen.
I don't even think the Suns are that attractive. The Suns are like actually, whatever.
Well, they have talent. I mean, if Booker and
shit is like the Lakers catch. Like the Suns are a fucking joke compared to the Lakers. Like the Lakers look like
they have
the most well run. No,
I mean, Anthony Davis is better than Durant, but Booker is better than.
Yeah, but they're just in such a shit situation. Everything about that team sucks. Like their only assets of value are guys that they don't want to trade, and they have nothing else to trade. So yeah, no, I mean whatever. If you want to include them, sure. But I personally do not think if I was LeBron James, I would look at that team and be like, well, what can you give me? Oh, well, we can draft Bronny. It'd be like, great, awesome.
The only other guy is the guy who did seduce him once upon a time when he was in Cleveland. It's a well written about article. Maybe Adrian Brody gets him to South Beach again. I don't know that they can make that work, though. And I don't love the fit, but he would have Bam and the best coach in the league and some good role players. They'd probably have to get rid of Jimmy, I would imagine. So,
yeah.
What about Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Wait, what if he wants to play with Cam Thomas, bro?
Yeah, the next Brunson.
He's already better than Brunson. What are you talking about?
Look at what he was doing at 23. Look what Brunson was doing. I think that. Look, I said this on the record. And I'm on the record multiple times saying that I want nothing to do with LeBron James. I also have said that that's easy for me to say because I am not answering to James Dolan. I am not a GM that, the potential for embarrassment if it ever came out that you could have had LeBron James was willing and open to coming to your team, in this case the Knicks, and you said thanks but no thanks, is extremely high. And while it's easy to be like, well, you can't operate in fear and you've got to do what you think is right, those are all very ideal and lofty things to say, and they're very easy for me to say talking on a podcast. But when you're actually talking about the realities of being a GM in the NBA, I don't think it's not that easy. It's not. I don't think it 100% is not that easy. So while I personally, it's easy for me to say this, like I do think the Knicks are a very potentially attractive situation for somebody like LeBron James, where, we've talked about it. I do think winning another championship for him, regardless of where it is, would enhance his legacy. But doing it in New York would do a lot for his legacy. And we know that matters to him. And this Knicks team is more equipped to not just acquire him, but acquire him and then still have a quality team around him.
Well, I mean, the best 1B you could find in basketball right now.
Right. And
he might be a 1A, he might not, but they're in a better 1B than him.
And the fact that you can offer, like, hey, they can basically get to they can trade for LeBron if they just get to, like,
Randall would have to be included, right?
It would be like Randall, it'd be Bogdanovich. And
can you do it without Randall? And would you want to do it without Randall?
You would have to start including like Mitch and other guys, and it would just, I don't know. To me, I don't really get the fit between LeBron and Randall. So
even if Randall plays, LeBron, if he plays defense though,
yeah,
LeBron the four.
LeBron does not play defense like that anymore, and that's fine. He's 40 years old. I get why. The Knicks can make a trade for him, and they can do it without necessarily gutting their roster. They would probably have to give up, obviously not maybe, they'd have to give up some draft capital. But again, LeBron drives the ship here. And if LeBron is like, hey, Lakers, I'm opting in, trade me to New York, there might be some negotiating, there might be some hemming and hawing, but I do think that he has the cachet to get them to play ball and do it without.
What do you think the logistics of that trade would look like?
Like I said, probably Bogdanovich, Randall. Maybe you throw in a guy like maybe Mitch goes out.
Can we keep Deuce?
Yeah, maybe you should. I mean, maybe you can keep Deuce. But yeah, maybe Deuce goes out, whatever it is, and then you throw in some picks, and voila, there it is. But you'd still have,
I mean, when you talk about picks again, it's a 40-year-old guy. Are we paying 4 unprotected first? Which is
no, absolutely not, absolutely not. Again, he has leverage here. Like he has the leverage to be like, hey, I want to go to this team. I mean, we already saw this play out with Harden, right? And what did they end up getting? Harden opted in. And I'm not saying obviously LeBron is better than Harden. That's not my point. My point is, let's say LeBron opts in and it's like, hey, I want to go to New York, trade me to New York, and I don't want to go anywhere else, trade me to New York. Are you really going to play hardball with LeBron James for the Lakers? And if you are, like, again, we already saw this with James Harden. What did he end up going for, right? He went for like a shitty first, or not a shitty first, but a first well out in years. He got them some expiring contracts, and they got to and the Clippers also had to eat a bad salary in PJ Tucker. Like it wasn't some haul, it was Marcus Morris, Nick Batum. There's one other player I'm forgetting. I think either 1 first or 2 first. I think one of the first might have been from another team. Whatever it was not some haul. And I don't think, because Harden successfully kind of killed a lot of the leverage that Philly might have had, I think LeBron obviously can do the same. And I don't think the Lakers would want to get into a pissing contest with LeBron and Clutch, especially since AD is also represented by Clutch. And look, at the end of the day,
and you also think if LeBron gets traded, AD will ask out too, right?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know, maybe, but he would also maybe he wants to be the guy in LA and see what they can do around him, how they would retool around him. I don't think that's guaranteed. But like, to me, that is like the framework of what a deal would look like was probably given away with what the Harden framework looked like. They didn't end up getting Terrence Mann, even though they really wanted Terrence Mann in that trade because he was like the only young player the Clippers had of value. Shut the fuck up about Bones Highland. But like, that's what I think. Now, he also could just sign outright with the Sixers. He could sign for, I think his player option for this upcoming season is 51 point something million.
Why would you sign with the Sixers over Oklahoma City besides being a bigger market?
You don't think he could just look at them and be like, me, Joel Embiid, Maxey is the best 3 people trio?
I think he could say the same thing about SGA, Chet Holmgren in year 2, and him. Like, and also there's the fact that does he really want to play with Embiid? Embiid is not the most fun player. Maybe LeBron doesn't take that into account, but
maybe. I mean,
it is an easier conference too. So to your point,
it's easier conference, which is another big piece. You really only have 1 or 2 teams that you're contending with in the East if you go to either the Knicks or the Sixers. I don't know. To me, I do think the Knicks are the best situation for him because I think that assuming they bring back Hartenstein and OG, which I don't see why OG for sure. I'm like almost positive he'll be back. Hartenstein, I personally think it's a very strong chance he's back. I understand the trepidation that a lot of Knicks fans have given some of the limitations of what we can offer him. But if he comes back and LeBron effectively slides into the Randall spot in the lineup, that's probably, that's the best lineup in basketball. Like Brunson, Dante, OG, LeBron, Hartenstein, and then your bench is, let's say Deuce, let's say Hart, and then you can figure out the rest. That's the bet. Like and we're seeing this right now with the Celtics when they're healthy. Yeah, like some of these depth pieces might not be the best once you get outside of their top 7, 8 guys, but if that top 7 or 8 is healthy, they're fucking awesome. And if you can get that team healthy into the playoffs, they're bare, and I think they can beat anybody. And honestly, I think they'd be the favorite. They would be the favorite in the East. I'm pretty confident about that. If they should able to get LeBron at a price that was effectively like Randall, Bogdanovich's contract, let's say Mitch, and a couple picks. Whatever, it doesn't even matter. The picks don't really matter when you're talking about evaluating next year's roster, I mean, that's the best team in basketball. That is the best team in basketball. And I think that's the best. I think
you are adding someone to a team with health concerns. You're adding a 40-year-old guy to a team with health concerns, right?
you are.
I mean,
so
and you're adding it to a team that already looked like, for 20 games, the best team in basketball, right?
Right.
So I guess what is
health risk is real, but I think the Knicks are the best option for him. And I think the Sixers would be the second. And I think you can argue.
But is he the best option for us?
Well, that's a different thing. That's not the exercise. The exercise is what's best for these guys. Do I think he's the best option for the Knicks? Of the players that are available this offseason? Maybe. Yeah, probably.
Well, given the cost for a lot of the other, I mean, Caruso is not going to cost that, right?
Right, but he's also not going to like be
LeBron.
So there's that. Yeah, like I don't know. I think you can argue Philly being a better fit, but I do think it's those two teams. And
why not? So Oklahoma City just because of SGA, or just because
I don't know. I just don't. Yeah, I don't love.
Because I think him at the 4 next to Chet is a pretty intriguing fit.
I mean, it'd be great. But yeah, I mean, if you think it's Oklahoma City, that's cool too. But the West is tough. The West is harder than the East, and I think that has to factor into it. So I would say that, but I think those are the three teams. I don't really think there's another one that's comparable and has any type of reasonable path to acquiring him.
San Antonio? He gets to play with the next LeBron?
No, absolutely not. He
gets to play for the best coach. The coach he has a lot of respect for.
Yes, good for him.
We know how much
LeBron values coaching.
Well, I mean, if you look at year one for LeBron, he was 26-6, which is good numbers, not greatest of all time numbers. The next year he was at like 28-6-6. Luka's the same thing. If you expect a similar type of increase from Wemby, and I know you probably don't call him a top 15 player, he's not in the top 20.
Wemby, I mean, he's whatever it is, he's an alien.
And there's a good reason to believe that even the way he improved over the season, he could improve it. Like, I don't think it's crazy to say he'd be top 10. I don't think it's crazy to be top 5 next year. I think that is on the 75th percentile, but it ain't an outlier. So, like with that, and if they can just add someone at the guard position, that could be a really good. And like, I think LeBron does have a lot of respect for Popovich, right? So I wouldn't rule them out if he is really going to go full free agent. You can never rule Pat Riley out.
I think you can rule Pat Riley out. I think he's super. He got very, very fortunate with the Butler thing. I don't think he's done that much in the last 7 or 8
Pat
years.
Riley washed? You're hearing it first.
I just don't. I don't think. I think he's gotten very lucky. I think Spoelstra has bailed him out of a lot of bad GM moves that he has. He's putting lipstick on a pig, but I guess the pig ends up getting to the fucking finals twice.
Are you calling Max Strus a pig?
Yes. But like, yeah, I don't know. I will say I'll say the Knicks. I think that's the best situation for LeBron. What about you?
Yeah, the Knicks.
All right,
but there's bias there because I think Tibbs is a great coach for him. He's going to be protected with bigs, and I think Jalen Brunson is, along with Kyrie Irving, the best co-star guard in the NBA.
Yeah,
I think he's better than Kyrie Irving because he's actually better at being the number one. But as a number two, like, there's no other guard I'd rather have. Not even Maxey, not even Murray. So,
yeah. All right, next one on here, Paul George, who I think will end up having a very similar list for. What would be the best place for Paul George?
Yeah, it's Philly. I think it's more Philly than even New York, because if he came to New York, we're either trading Randall for him, which means OG or him has to play the 4. With OG's injury issues, I'm not sure that's what you want him to do full time. And with George has his own injury issues. You can play Paul George at the 2. At this point in his career, does he have kind of the ability to do that and the shiftiness to beat quicker defenders? Is that the matchup you want, opposed to playing at a higher spot? I think Paul George would be awesome here. Don't get me wrong. That's also just because we're an awesome team. In Philly, there's a very clear fit. He takes the Tobias Harris role, and he's just more dynamic. That's what they needed. It was the blinking red light when they lost the Knicks. Beyond their injury issues, beyond if they had D'Anthony Melton, it would have been a sweep for the Sixers. By the way, if Embiid's eyes didn't fall out, if Maxey wasn't hacked every time, they would have swept the Knicks. But leaving that aside, it's pretty clearly Philly. If I was to think of other teams, I don't think. I mean, San Antonio. I think San Antonio is a great fit for everyone because I'm sorry, I think Wemby is just a freaking crazy big to fit anyone next to. Oklahoma City for many of the same reasons. I'm pretty high on Chet too. Although I don't know how well he'd fit next to SGA. SGA hasn't shown the off-ball prowess that Brunson has, so I do think the Knicks are a better fit than those two teams. Trying to think what else. Maybe Atlanta, but they don't have the same prospects. And then none of the West teams. I mean, there's also teams that you're like, yeah, would he be great in Denver? Of course. Denver, that's not going to happen, right?
Yeah, there's no path.
So you have to be a little bit realistic there. That's it, Philly, and then the Knicks are probably the second best. Same thing.
Yeah, I would say Oklahoma City
over Philly.
Yeah, I think so.
Why that for him and not LeBron?
I think that his game actually suits playing off of SGA in a way that LeBron's doesn't. I don't think you're not. There's not going to be much of like a weird. Oh, we got to figure out how to play off of each other type thing that I think will exist with LeBron. I mean, I think
wants to be an off-ball guy. He said that. Right?
Yeah, he said that, so he'd be happy to do it. I think they need a real wing. They need a tall wing. Like Jalen Williams is 6'5". He's a 7.
No, he's 6. That's what he's 6'4". He's 6'3".
Yeah, but he's got like a 7.
He's got insane wingspan.
Yeah, his wingspan is crazy, but he's playing the 4 for them. And maybe he can still play the 4 nominally, but they definitely needed, and they do need. Still need.
Or you'd want one at least.
Yeah, a taller wing type player. And I think Paul George, give them that, give them another shot creator, which I do think that we saw in that Dallas series they needed, at least as things stand. Obviously, Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren can take a leap, and maybe that changes. Maybe a guy like Casey Wallace can take a leap, that changes. Either way, the point is, I think George just slots in there really nicely. You can send Lou Dort back to the Clippers and absorb Paul George's contract. If he opted in or however the fuck they wanted to do it, they could absorb that into the space. So there's a lot, there's things for them to do to get Paul George at his number or a number.
Is that a better fit than the Clippers themselves, though?
Yes.
Yes. For a large parts of the season, they've looked like the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, but we all know that the Clippers are never going to be healthy, so it doesn't really matter to me. And if you're Paul George, you want to be in a situation that can mitigate your own personal potential for injury, and also just a team that, hey, I don't think I can or need to be playing 70 games a season. He played a shit ton of games this year, and it's like he had to because the Clippers needed him to. I don't think he'd have to do that with Oklahoma City. I just think he'd be a perfect fit there, and I honestly think if they got Paul George, they would be the favorite in the West. I think.
We're not counting Detroit as a good fit for any of these teams, right?
Detroit's a good fit for fucking Cooper Flag next year. That's who they're a good fit for. But yeah, I think that Paul George. Yeah, I'll say Oklahoma City for him.
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. I'd still go Philly because I think they're closer to a ring. I think the East Coast thing makes a difference. I think Maxey's awesome, and I think playing off a big like Embiid who can cover for him on defense. I think Nick Nurse is a better coach than Mark Daniel. I would still say Philly, but I definitely see the argument for OKC.
All right. I'm using the Hoops Hype list, by the way. So if you want to bitch about the order of these players, cry to Hoops Hype. Pascal Siakam is listed 4 here. He's going back to Indiana. OG is listed at 5. I know there are Knicks fans that think that he might. I don't think he's leaving. I don't think he's going anywhere. So I'm not.
Do you think there's a limit on how much they'd offer? Like if he wants $50 million a year,
who do you got?
Chelsea Clinton?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to give him $50 million a year. Maybe on a 1-year deal then, but not. That's
for a guy with his injury history.
Yeah, he's not taking a 1-year balloon deal or something. So no. All right, this one is. I'll put him in there. We'll include him because I do think it's interesting. James Harden, Clippers. He's a free agent this year. He averaged 16.6 points, 5.1 rebounds, 8.5 assists, 43% from the field, 38% from three. What do you think? I think it's just, I just don't see. Okay. I got a team, but I'll let you go first.
Well, Philly we can rule out, right? The relationship is burned. I also just don't like the fit with Embiid or Maxey.
How can you know though?
Oklahoma City I would rule out. I don't love the fit with SGA. He is it's a little like Trae Young, right? Where it's a guy who should be good off ball, but just isn't. If the Lakers do lose LeBron, I think that's an interesting place. I don't know what their cap situation is like that. If they lose LeBron, the Lakers are interesting for him though. If they're going to try to keep Anthony Davis, Miami has no path to do it. He would be a horrible fit with Trae Young. Washington if he just wants to get points. Detroit if he just wants to get points. On a contender though, I'm trying to think. Minnesota can't do it. I'm actually kind of blanking here. Who do you have in mind? Because I have a feeling I didn't mention the team you wanted to mention.
The Orlando Magic.
Oh, I kind of hate that. Just from a vibes perspective.
Vibes perspective is what it is. They desperately need any type of shot creation from the perimeter. They need a guy who's some type of semblance from the 3-point line, off the dribble, very specifically. I do think there'd be some teething issues in terms of fitting alongside and with Franz and Paolo, but I actually think I'm definitely not a Harden fan. Never been a Harden fan. But like the guy the way he's played the last couple of years next to higher usage guys, again, whatever his issues are, I don't think his issues are like he's trying to average 30 and 10 now. Like I think he's definitely shifted more towards being comfortable, being more of like a pure point, quote unquote. But like
average 16, 8, and 5 on 59 true shooting this year. So
yeah, pretty solid. I think that's like from a pure basketball perspective. And we know that they could surround him and protect him defensively to a high level. They're an extremely good defensive team. They would still need to go out and get some shooting. I have no idea what his contract is going to be, by the way. James Harden, no fucking idea what number. But like, this is a guy that I think Orlando can make a competitive offer. He made $35 million this past season, a player option that he picked up, as we all know. I don't think the Clippers are even going to give him 35. Because I think if I were the Clippers, I'd be like, what fucking team are you going to go to? Like, what's your market? You don't have a fucking market. So I think they'll play hardball with him, and they should play hardball with him.
Do you think you'd prefer Disney World over LA strip clubs and also Disneyland?
I think that James Harden is still chasing that bag that he stupidly did not take when Brooklyn offered him a max extension. And I think whatever team and whatever place offers him a chance to play competitive basketball, but also can do the best job of making him whole financially, is the team that he'll go to. And I think Orlando has a chance, and I think they need shot creation. They need not exactly, but they need the things that he can do. They desperately need that on their roster. And I think because of the number they can get him at, they would still be able to add more pieces. I think they'd still be able to get more shooting. Can they get James Harden and Malik Monk in an offseason? I don't know. They might have to do some maneuvers to create more cap space, which they can do.
Well, they can trade Fultz or Cole. I don't think they should trade Cole Anthony, but those are guys with value.
Yeah, they could trade Cole Anthony. They could trade Cole Anthony. They could, if they really wanted to, they could trade Jonathan Isaac to a team. He has his guarantee date next year for his contract isn't until like January, so they could do a lot of things. Then they have options, and they have ways to clear cap space. So if I'm, I think that's his idea. I think that's the best possible situation, and a situation, obviously as we've talked about, like places that he could actually get to. So I'll say Orlando for James Harden.
Do you think there's an option for the Knicks?
No shot.
You think it's a terrible fit next to Brunson?
I think it's a terrible fit next to Brunson. I think it's a terrible fit with Tibbs as the head coach. I don't think his personality is right for the team that we've built. So yeah, I'm just no, absolutely.
Well, the Magic are kind of built in the same mold. So I guess I asked this not to like be facetious, but it is like a thing that's tough to quantify.
But they desperately need the shot creation. They need the ball handling. They need the ability
we do too.
No, we don't. We don't need it like that.
We need a secondary.
Yeah, we don't need it the way they need it.
Paolo is not Brunson, is what you're saying.
And they were the worst offense. They were the worst offense in the playoffs. And they were brutal. They were terrible. They couldn't fucking score. And I know Cleveland's a good defensive team, but come on, they were terrible in that series offensively.
Well, the last team that Cleveland played in the playoffs before that was also a decent offensive and was last in the playoffs. And they had Jalen Brunson.
They're second to last in the playoffs. And they sucked against Miami too.
Well, only because last was Cleveland. Yeah. But point is, I guess what I'm asking is kind of a more general philosophical question: is how do you weigh vibes in these kind of things? Especially like if you're the Magic, you're a little bit like the Knicks, or maybe a year ago.
This isn't about the Magic, though. I'm not saying the Magic do it. I think the Magic shouldn't do it. But I'm saying like I could see
because of vibes. When I say vibes, I'm doing an older thing.
He's older than our young team, so they don't necessarily need to like shorten their window potentially by getting him. But they could probably just get him with cap space, so they'd still have all their picks. They could use that contract down the line later to get a guy they really want, who's younger maybe. But like if I'm Magic, I wouldn't do it. But if I'm James Harden and the Magic were interested, I would definitely be listening, and I'd very much consider that a positive situation for myself.
Is Memphis at all a potential factor here? Or do you think the fit with Ja sucks?
No, and they have Bane too. But they don't really need what Harden.
Well, Bane isn't a heavy on-ball guy, right?
I mean, he was when he's developed that as a second guy. I think he's pretty solid there now. But Memphis is so weird. We haven't like seen them play basketball the way that like they're supposed to be constructed for feels like 2 years now almost because of how fucked
it's a year and a half with
It just everything's been so fucked up there for a while. So I don't know. They're hard to get a read on.
Is Ja Morant the Jackie Jr. of the NBA?
No, because he's actually talented.
Oh wow, Jackie Jr. could spell oblique in Scrabble.
Oblique and
ass.
Yeah, ass.
How about you give me some right now?
Oh no, I was just kidding. Come on, Jackie. I'm sick. Oh yeah, I know.
She has like 104 fever.
She looks like she's like fucking her nose is all stuffy. That seems so funny. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go with the Magic. I'm going with the Magic for Harden.
I think that makes sense.
What's your pick?
It feels like he should be a Chicago Bull at this point in his career. Like it wouldn't happen, and it's a horrible fit, but that's exactly why I think he should be a Chicago Bull. Orlando makes sense. I think a defensive team that could use like a veteran guy to create makes sense. I'm gonna put San Antonio honestly for all these teams. For all these players. I'm trying to think of other teams, but like most other like a team that doesn't play defense and jacks up threes, he'd be a good fit in Indiana. But they have a lot of good guards.
Him and Halliburton playing together would be something to.
I mean, those are the most lovable guys in the league, right? I mean, it'd be tough for you to root against the Pacers if they had Harden and Halliburton, right?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that'd be a bad fit too because they play so fast, and Harden is way more methodical than that.
Yeah. Well, Houston played pretty fast, didn't they? In terms of overall pace.
I don't think so. I don't think they were ever super fast.
I think they were slow when they got into half court, but like they still pushed the ball a lot.
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to go back and look, and honestly, I don't care. That was such a different version of Harden too. It was a different James Harden at that point. Wait, so who'd you pick for Harden?
I'm actually gonna go Miami.
Okay, all right, I could see it, but I just culturally I'd be
So
surprised.
you have a great center and defensive culture around him. You're gonna have shooters around him. You're gonna have a team that knows how to play pick and roll. And you're gonna have. I think that's part of it with Orlando is that like if he wants to get up to his bullshit, you don't really have other guys that can hold him accountable. Where he's had success, you had Chris Paul to hold him accountable. You had, you know, Westbrook and Durant to hold him accountable. You didn't have anyone to hold him accountable in Brooklyn. This year in LA, you had Westbrook and others to hold him accountable. I think that culture is probably something good for Harden. But also Miami is known for its strip clubs, so that's probably not great for Harden. But I like what Orlando's building, and the idea of introducing James Harden there is problematic to me, to say the least.
Yeah. All right. Next guy on here, number 7, DeMar DeRozan.
Knicks.
Yeah, God, Jesus. I honestly, I struggle with this because I don't even know what the hell his best situation is. I don't know.
What do you think he wants? What do you want?
I think he wants money, and I think he wants to. I mean, he plays his game. His game is his game, and he stayed true to that everywhere he's been. You know, Toronto, San Antonio, now Chicago. He doesn't really adapt like that. It's a tricky fit, obviously, for those reasons. He's a guy who needs he needs spacing around him because his entire game is in the mid range. And he himself is not going to take any type of volume from 3. So he's kind of a non-spacer off ball, even though he's like a skilled perimeter scorer. He's a very weird player. Doesn't really get to the rim at a high level. And is obviously, 34, 35, whatever the fuck he is. He's older. This was one of his, I think this is like his worst year.
Are you saying I'm older?
Yes. For an NBA player, you'd be old. But he's, 34, 35. I don't know. I think if I had to pick a team, so you need somebody who's really good defensively that can protect him, a team that gives you good spacing, and a team that could pay him the type of money he wants. I mean, from what we've heard, the reporting has been like the Bulls can give him or he seems to want, the Bulls would give him like a 2-year, $70 or $80 million type deal. So if that's what he's looking for, it makes it a lot harder. But oh man, I think I would say I don't know how they could get him. I have an idea. Might not be easy, but I mean they can get him, so I'll include him. I think Miami. I think Miami.
Well, one of the things when you said you were talking about what he cares about, you didn't mention winning a championship.
I don't think that matters to him that much.
Well, you can go right up Lake Michigan. Play next to a good playmaker in Cade Cunningham. And he gives them what they want, right? They need someone else besides Cade.
Cade and him playing together would be like
I don't think that would be that awful. He has thrived next to other playmakers before.
But it would be the Spider-Man meme though.
No. Cade is not like
he's
a
look at his
10
shot.
times better
Look at where
passer.
he's shooting. Look at where he's shooting from.
What?
They both
He
like
takes
to play
threes, but he takes threes.
He takes most.
And Cade is a good catch and shoot player. He can catch and shoot. Cade plays defense, and it allows Cade to not have to carry so much usage.
Are we sure Cade Cunningham's good?
What?
Are we sure Cade Cunningham's good?
I am.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
That he's when you say he's not good, do you mean like I don't think he's Luka? I
Well,
think
yes, I would. I think that's safe. to
I
say.
think there's a top 25 player in there though. That's where I think we disagree. Yeah.
So. Cade shot.
On Detroit,
Yes, on Detroit, he shot 27.5% of his shots from 3 to 10 feet. He shot 15.4% of his shots from 10 to 16 feet, and he shot 10.6% of his shots from the long mid range, 16 out to the 16 feet out to the 3-point line. He
yeah,
took
but he also averaged 8 threes per 100.
he only takes
not
28%.
just-
He takes just under 29% of his shots from 3.
yeah, but he just takes a lot of shots. 8 3-point attempts per 100 is not low. That's pretty high. It's not even medium really. It's like Grimes, for example, before he really scaled up was at 9. Like as a rookie, he was 9 3-point attempts per game. Fournier is at 12. Dante DiVincenzo at 16. But like Brunson's at 11. Like he does take a lot of threes. It's not DeRozan here we're talking about. And he's a better passer. He's a better defender. And he's way more efficient. I mean, on that Detroit disaster, he was 55 true shooting. That would be the highest of RJ Barrett's career. And RJ Barrett actually played with good players. And you're like, well, we're saying he's a good player, not RJ Barrett, who's not a good player. Fine. But like, I think with the skill set, the fact he's only 22, the fact that he can shoot, finish at the rim, pass, and defend, and he's just been in a disaster, like, I'm not out on that at all. If the Knicks had a real pathway to getting him, I think they would have to pursue it. He'd be perfect next to Brunson.
I don't know. I don't know. He's played pointless basketball for 3 years. I always think evaluating guys like that is super fucking tricky.
Remember De'Aaron Fox, though? Remember how much we even clowned the idea of giving up quickly for De'Aaron Fox?
And we were right.
De'Aaron Fox is pretty fucking good now, man. The way we used to talk about him as like an empty... We used to talk about him like he was Colin Sexton. Who, by the way, it's turned into a decent player in his own right. But guys in shitty situations, you are right. It's tough to evaluate, but I think as a result...
Here's what I would say. I would say that Fox had an elite attribute. He had an elite physical attribute. Cade doesn't have like.
I think being 6'8" and being able to handle the ball,
slow.
he does.
Like he's not. He can't turn the corner.
Also, it's Luka.
Okay, really?
Well, Cade has elite ball handling and size combination, and he can shoot. That's an interest. That is like not Fox's speed as a standalone, but that combination is very rare.
Yeah, that combination is great.
And it doesn't fail usually.
But I look, his situation has sucked. So I'm saying this very much with like understanding that I understand his situation sucks. So this is not like some killer indictment of him, but like I don't know, he hasn't played well next to Ivy or Sasser or any of these guys, and they're not great. Obviously, they're bad.
They're not good.
Yeah, well, I think Sasser is probably.
Sasser's a solid player, but that's like saying you didn't play well next to Langston Galloway. It's like okay.
I think it's a little bit different than Langston Galloway. But like
Langston Galloway was an average NBA player.
Cade's the number one pick. I just feel like the fact that he's getting numbers and doing the stuff, and they're still the worst team in basketball, like. Even accounting for the fact that the coach sucked and the GM was the worst thing that's ever happened.
Well, everyone else on his team sucks.
I get that, but
one of the worst centers in the league. Who, by the way, everyone wanted to trade Mitch to.
Not everybody, pal.
I was anti-Duran from the beginning, but I was anti-Mark Williams too, and that would have been worse for us too. Maybe
no. Mark Williams is a better player than Duran because he actually knows
better than Duran, but he wouldn't have been a better option than keeping Mitch.
We'll see.
Ooh. That is a spicy Shwin take.
It's not. It has nothing to do with Mitch as a basketball player. It has to do more with like, hey, I mean, and Mark Williams had his own injury issues. I'm a little less worried about those because those seem to be like, it's always weird with it's just weird with big guys. So you never know. But Mitch at this point, we know for sure is like injury prone. It's just a fact. It's just what it is. So that's more of it than it has anything to do with like me thinking. Mark Williams on another level than or something.
I would imagine you're higher on LaMelo than Cade. I am too, by the way. But you are higher on LaMelo.
I mean, he's been an all-star. Like he's already done that, and he played and he did it on a terrible team, terrible roster, not a great situation.
Like I think it's more. I think Cade.
Look, we haven't seen Cade on a good team, so maybe Cade on a good team is a different prospect and a different beast, and he'll go there. Like
I'd love to see him on this next team.
I'll
In the
put it
RJ Barrett, if he got put in the RJ Barrett role, I think he would have been an all-star by now.
Maybe I don't think so, but I also think that like Cade might just be a poor man's Andre Iguodala, and I say that in the nicest way possible because Andre Iguodala was.
Are you saying that the Max Kellerman way?
No, I'm saying that in a way that is like Andre Iguodala was the super sixth man for a dynastic Warriors team. Like Cade, maybe. I don't know, man. Iguodala was really good when he was in Philly, and he was the number one guy. And
he wasn't a shooter. Like, has he ever shot over like 33%?
No, it wasn't a shooter, but it was. I mean, the league itself is just very different. It's a very different league that he played in. Then, I'm just saying that like
that type where he's better suited being.
Yeah, he's
super.
Like, and he was fine. Like as a one, you knew he was a good player, but you were like, yeah, but your team isn't going anywhere if this guy's your one. And as you know, if you want to say the book's not closed on Cade, I agree with that. I don't think the book's closed on him.
But you're also, I mean, I don't think anyone.
I'm just saying that
could be your number two either. I think Cade could be your number two. Like, I think it's crazy to say he could be as good as Jaylen Brown. I don't think that's crazy.
I just think that you've got to be either like so insanely skilled and a crazy level of shot maker to be a number two level option if you're Cade, because he's never going to just like blow by guys and dominate physically or athletically at the rim.
Which Brown can.
Yeah. So I think that you're basically talking about the pathway for him is like, can you beat Chris Middleton? And maybe he can. Maybe he can. I don't know.
I think he's a way better passer, and I do think you're underrating his athleticism a little bit. Like their spacing is so fucked that I think that precludes a lot of his ability to showcase those. Like you're not going to blow by someone if Jalen Duren is keeping some like the next guy right there. You know what I mean?
Maybe
I think that happens a lot. Like I haven't seen him struggle to like create space as much. You know what I mean?
Wait, so is your answer for this? Is your answer for DeRozan Detroit? Is that like actually your answer?
Yeah, because what contender is he actually a good fit on?
I'm gonna say this. Understanding,
so just go to Detroit and play next to a guy you can help mentor.
Understanding that the pathway for him to get to a team like this would be nearly impossible. But because it's DeRozan and we've already determined that he's this weirdo that like exists in his own space, I am going to say I'm going to say the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Hate that.
Yeah, it's possible. Like I don't love his.
I like Ant. Don't do that to Ant.
I think if you were able to sign DeRozan and convince him that you're coming off the bench, he'd be awesome for them. That's what I think. But I don't love it. I don't love DeRozan.
I think the second part of that is where I struggle. But maybe you're. I mean, he seems like a good guy.
He seems like a great guy. He seems fucking awesome. Which why I feel bad every time I slander him. But like, he's just fucking such a bizarre player. Like, dude, just learn how to shoot threes. It's crazy, or at least try. All right, enough DeMar DeRozan and enough Cade Cunningham. All right, here's number 8. Let's avoid the off the court discussion with him. Miles Bridges. He averaged. I'm actually surprised by this. I didn't know this. He averaged last year. He averaged 21.7 rebounds and 3.3 assists. Shot 46.2% from the field, just under 35% from three. Definitely not my favorite for many reasons. But leaving aside his personal issues, he's still a pretty dynamic basketball player, man. Like, it's just hard to not. You can see it, like you see it when you watch him play. He's still got that bounce. I was actually kind of surprised the first time I saw him this season because
he got cooked by Kevin Knox in 1-on-1.
Yeah, it's like we'll never understand that. Probably was fucking hungover as shit or something. But like, I remember the first time I saw him this year, I was like, wait, he didn't play basketball last year, and he looks like still like really bouncy and athletic and strong. I was surprised.
Worth noting that the Hornets were 4 points worse with him on than off.
Yes. I don't know what to do with that. I'm like, again,
worst team, one of the worst teams.
And it was just their season was so bizarre, right? It was like they didn't have any semblance of structure because LaMelo was in and out of the lineup. And then by the time they got it at the trade deadline, then you're entering like the weirdest part of the season, especially for teams like them. So uh, I'm not sure. I just as a pure basketball fan, a team that could use him, I don't know if they could get him. I don't know if their pathways exist. But like, do you think that he works on like the Lakers?
Yeah, I mean, they have Rui. He's who they want Rui to be, essentially.
Yeah.
He absolutely works in LA. I don't think it's the best fit for him, but I do think that's a really good fit for him. As much as I hate to keep bringing this team up,
The Pistons,
no.
the Knicks,
Who is the second best team in the East?
the Knicks,
Who's the third best team?
Philly.
Yeah, and if that third best team got to play the second best team with Miles Bridges instead of Kelly Oubre, I mean, I think Brunson is.
Oubre, weirdly, I thought
he had a good
series.
Oubre. He had a good series.
Yeah, he actually
Miles
had
Bridges
a
is
decent
better.
year too. Like it's
Miles
just a
Bridges
weird
is
guy.
better. But that's kind of my point, though, right? Kelly Oubre sucked ass most of his career, came to Philly and had a solid year. Some of the same gifts as Bridges, I think that's for him. He's gonna fucking take catch and shoot threes off of Maxey. He's going to drive. He's gonna attack closeouts, and and get to dump off to Embiid, things that he's shown he can do. He can drive and kick. He's probably overrated as a defender because of some of his highlight plays.
Well, he was
Philly's the best fit for him.
He was flat out terrible on defense this year. But again, like,
yeah, everyone is on that team.
This is this is like the PJ Washington thing. Like PJ Washington never played defense. Then he leaves Charlotte, and now he's like this competitive
he
defender.
Played the least defense on his own wallet, right? So
he played the least defense in a lot of places.
He didn't use protection the way you're supposed to. Sorry,
he definitely didn't protect himself. It's definitely accurate to say that. He's been an efficient player at various points in his career. Bridges, this year was his least efficient. It's not his least efficient season, but his least efficient season since his second year in the league.
I'm curious how that break out when Malello.
Yeah.
LaMelo did play, right?
Well, also like his usage went up to probably a level just above where you want him. He was at just under 25 usage this year. I think you want him closer to like 20, 22. Seems to be his kind of sweet spot there. So I mean that's kind of why I like him in LA, right?
I do like LA too. I just think Philly's a better team. So
Philly is a better team, and we know they could sign him. Like they could just sign him outright. There's nothing they have to worry about. So I guess if I'm gonna figure in like the realism factor, I too will say Philly. I think that's a pretty good call.
Yeah, but I agree on the LA point. He's what they wanted Rui to, and Rui's been good. I'm not gonna fault Rui, but that's what they've wanted next to LeBron. So I think both are good answers. I think it'd be good in OKC, although they have some good wings, but they don't. OKC doesn't really have a true 6'6", 6'7" guy, right? Really. Like Isaiah Joe is skinny, Lou Dort is 6'3", so it'd fit well there too. I think anyone is a good fit in San Antonio. I'll throw this one out there. I think he would be good in New Orleans. I don't know how you feel about that, but
New Orleans, I don't know. I think he's still kind of like an inside-out player, and that's what Zion is. They just need to super prioritize spacing, I think.
But he's really good at attacking closeouts. You know what I mean? Like him playing off
really
of Zion closeouts, I think and he can pass. So I think like him being the next guy to like yes and on Zion could be interesting. And he'd have to step it up on defense. He'd be buying that the tools would match the ability. But
yeah, definitely possible.
Also, he went to a shitty school, so fuck Miles Bridges.
Yeah, terrible school. All right, number 9. I don't know how this guy's ranked 9th, by the way. I think he should be.
This was me when we drafted Kevin Knox. How did this guy fall to 9?
So number 9. Funny enough, you mentioned Kevin Knox because this guy went to his alma mater, same alma mater. Malik Monk.
Orlando. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, this is Orlando. This is just Orlando. Like they should actually do this for sure. By the way, they should pay him. I think Sacramento is limited in what they can give him, just like we were with Hartenstein. I think they can give him 4-year 77 for Monk. So yeah, it's funny because I just think like the center market, it actually like it benefits us that Hartenstein is a center because that market is just different than it is for perimeter guys. I think somebody's gonna pay him, man. I really do. I think somebody's gonna come in and give him like a 4-year 100, 4-year 95.
And
like
the
that.
thing is, like with shooters, is also it doesn't have to be teams that need it. Like Indiana,
there's no limit to shooting, right? You always want more shooting.
And India, if that's your team motto, it stands to reason. I don't know if Indiana can make this work, but I think they would. Like Malik Monk fits what they do on offense really fucking well. I don't think New Orleans can make it work, but he's exactly what they need.
New Orleans has pathways. New Orleans can make things happen.
So I think Malik Monk, I think that's another great fit for him, right? I mean, imagine we got to play off fucking Zion.
You know, I'll say New Orleans too. I fucking hate New Orleans, and I feel like we ignore them, and they're very easy.
Well, we're biased towards big markets.
Yeah, but like no, I think it's because like we're like Zion. I'm like I don't know if I'm ready to believe in you again, Zion. But dude, yeah, he would be awesome next to Zion. He'd be fucking amazing.
You know who he is? He's like without the attitude. He's like Nick Kyrgios. Like it's not the attitude problems, but it's this when you see that guy play at his best, like he's beating fucking Federer, Djokovic, but also there is the other side when you just like will get bageled by like 300th player in the world. That's Zion. Like at his best, he's like LeBron.
I mean, and he was really good after the in-season tournament. He like got his shit together. But it's like, dude, can you just come into a season healthy? Anyway, if he is healthy, and I think another key piece of this is
what do they do with Ingram?
Yeah, I think they got to move off Ingram. But like, assuming they move Ingram, which I do think they will do this offseason, I mean, he's like what they got McCollum to be this type of player, but he's so much more dynamic than McCollum, so much more athletic. He's younger, and I was really happy to see kind of like him leaning into his playmaking more this year with Sacramento because I've always thought he's like a very nifty playmaker. His handle's not always been there to leverage that properly, especially when he first came in the league. He could like literally not dribble with his left hand to an insane level. But yeah, I mean, now his handle is better, so he's able to leverage that more. I think his playmaking would be really good for them. And, you know, let's just say they trade Ingram into some team's cap space for picks. Like, even then, you look at this team and you're like, man, if you put Malik Monk in there, Monk, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Zion, and Herb, and then you pick a center, whatever the fuck they do.
I mean, the inflection point is Zion, right? So if Zion is who you think he is, putting a shooter like Monk is dynamite, right? If he's not, then
and also like
non-starter anyway.
I mean, so. Monk and Quickly they're different, but they're in the same family tree of player, I think.
Same school.
Yeah, and I bring up Quickly because Quickly played with Zion in high school. They're really good together. And like, you know, that obviously high school is very different than fucking the NBA, but I think that it's just very easy to see how they would play together. I see your message. No, Quickly played with Zion. I think it might have been AAU.
Oh, no. Okay. I was thinking about South Carolina.
Yeah. No,
South Carolina played with Ja. That's right.
But yeah.
They all played him and RJ and all those guys played together.
Yeah.
You're right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think Monk, I think New Orleans. I like Monk in New Orleans. I like that fit.
I think the Orlando case is like they can probably protect him a little bit better on defense. But, you know, you're asking Herb and Trey Murphy to make their money, right? And Jonas, I guess, if they keep him. Trying to think of, I mean, Malik Monk also a shooter like that just fits anywhere.
Yes.
Like he fits in LA, obviously. He played really well there. If the Knicks didn't have DiVincenzo, I would be all over that for us. Fits, I think, in Philly. Even though they have a good amount of guards, like we don't know what's going to happen with Melton. But I think New Orleans and Orlando, I would say, are like the two teams where it's the most mutually beneficial growth.
All right. All right. Number 10. A former 76er. Tobias Harris.
Was he former before the Knicks series? Because I didn't really see him out there.
Yeah, I know. I think OKC for him.
On what deal? As like an eighth man?
7th, 8th man. I mean, they need depth, but they also just need that type of forward who's bigger, can score a bit.
Is he better going to a place where he can be a role player?
Yes.
Or better going to a shitty place where he can get a little more money, absorb usage to allow younger guys to grow? Because you know where I'm going back.
Yes.
Going back to BTB, to Rick's Cafe. I'm going to the state of Michigan otherwise, because he'd probably get more money there. He's played there before, and they could use someone to absorb however shitty his usage will be.
I see that. I just think he needs to go to a place where he doesn't need to produce every night and be like a 6th, 7th, 8th man. And I think OKC would give him that. I think he feels a need for them. And again, like I just think he would not like if he has 3 games in a row where he has 6 points, 8 points, whatever. I don't think it's going to be a crisis. But we know, like Tobias Harris, for all his flaws, he averaged 17 points a game last year. He can still score. He just is not going to do it every single night. And I think OKC can be fine with that. And they have the ability to take him on and put him into the rotation. And he fits, I think, the way they want to play. Now, obviously, can you get him to take more threes and not dribble into mid-range pull-ups? That's always been the most annoying thing about Tobias Harris. And we know that's huge for them, right? Because they're very, very into like optimizing their shot distribution, shot chart, all that stuff. But his size and his ability to score a bit, I think they need that, and I think they can use that. I think it would have been valuable for them against the Mavericks for sure. Especially, again, when you're putting him as like, hey, we just need you to be our best guy off the bench versus, hey, we need you to be our 3rd best player on our team.
Do you think he'd be available for MLE?
Yes, I think so.
Well, there's another team that suffered terrible injuries to the forward position.
Yes, I think they are very much potentially.
Which team do you think I'm talking about?
The New York Knicks.
So you'd be in on Harris for the MLE?
I would be fine with. I mean, I would like to keep it short term, like 2 years if you can, but I don't think that's terrible. No, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I think he fits well. I mean, we never played small ball 5 with him, but it gives you insurance for OG and
gives you insurance if Randall gets hurt again.
Randall and well, honestly, we've been lucky with Hart, but
yeah,
that is probably a shoe that's going to fall at some point, right? So, especially if he is going to play the 4 a lot. So I mean, I think it depends on the role he wants. To be honest, if he wants to start, I do think, or like if he wants to go be Bojan Bogdanovic in Detroit, I think he can do that. He can do that in Utah, right? It really depends on what he wants. He is from Long Island, so I think that is, and he's also, it's worth mentioning, very involved in the community. He is actually, I mean, even by NBA player standards, a lot of them do a lot of good. What did you just do?
Me?
Did you just do this?
No, I
thought you were doing that when I was talking about him doing good work in the community. I was like, that is Max Hater, bro. There are New York ties there as well, so could be an interesting fit as well.
Guy doing things for the community. Yeah, no, I would like that. I'm just gonna say OKC for him, but I do think the Knicks would be a very good fit. You saying the Knicks?
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna do a couple more of these and we'll get the fuck out of here. This is actually a funny one. D'Angelo Russell, who has a player option.
Can I just say Brooklyn for fun?
I
want to.
You can.
I want to say Brooklyn. Does it make basketball sense? Does anything make basketball sense in the state of? Sorry, the borough of Brooklyn. No, nothing about that team makes sense. They belong back in fucking Jersey. We need to get this fucking pygmy thing out of here. Filiatardo would not approve of it. Give it back to fucking give it back to fucking Ralphie, dude. Let him manage that shit. But if I was actually thinking of a basketball fit, also like I just keep thinking of teams I like clowning, like Atlanta. Just add him to Murray and Trey. I don't know. I actually think he wouldn't be bad in San Antonio. Like when he's been in those like kind of rebuilding situations, he does look for a shot too much, but he is a good playmaker. So that might be nice to have next to Wemby.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I think San Antonio. I think they could use his playmaking right now, his shot creation. I don't think there would be too much pressure on him just because of their overall situation. So yeah, I'll say San Antonio. I think that's a good fit.
What about LA?
Who knows? How could we ever know? Who knows what his fit would be?
What about Philadelphia? What about There's so many bad fits.
Maybe Portland could use him so they can get.
Nah, he's a bull, dude. He's a bull in spirit.
Just get him to Portland. They need one more fucking guard. All right, number 12, near and dear to our heart, Emmanuel Quickley.
I did not think that's what we were going to say. There's a free agent I thought you were going to talk about for a while.
We were finished with him. He's number 16 on this list.
Yeah, Toronto. Is it the best fit? Ooh. No, the best fit is San Antonio, dude. Imagine Emmanuel Quickley running pick and rolls with Victor Wembanyama.
I have a bet. I think this team they won't do it because this is not the splash they would like to make. I think it's Philly.
Because of how much? I mean, but how much does his friendship with Maxey play into that for you?
Not that much. I think but
because that would be an undersized backcourt.
It would be, but I think they'd be fine. I think you just have to put wings around them.
And Maxey's not a good defender.
Yeah, Quickley is a fine defender. I know, honestly, like Maxey's not a good defender.
But if you play him with Maxey, you're relying on Quickley to be your point of attack guy, which we both would say like is not his ideal role.
You? I mean, you can bring back Kelly Oubre. I thought he did fine at the point of attack.
But then you're putting Quickley or Maxey on a wing, right?
That's fine. I'm fine with that. I don't think I'm not that
worried against a team like Boston. That's problematic.
It might be, but I think that you can create a lot of advantages. We saw what Maxey did, torching the Knicks, playing off of Joel Embiid's gravity. I think Quickley would be really good playing off Joel Embiid's gravity. I think Quickley would be really good playing off of Maxey's gravity. I think Maxey would be really good playing off of what Quickley can do. We already know that they have that chemistry. We saw what they did in college together. And they'd still have cap space to go get other guys. Like, even if they had to give him a $30 million a year offer, they'd still have $30 million to go spend in free agency on top of that. So I'd like it, man. I think they'd be a really good fit, and I think it gives you options. You're still pretty young. You know, you can use Quickley as a trade chip maybe down the line or whatever, but it gives you somebody to grow alongside and with Maxey as well. And you're weakening a division opponent by taking a player from them. I think that has value, and I just like the fit, man. I do like, not so much the Maxey piece, which obviously is nice too, but more I just think him playing off of Embiid would be so dynamic, and I really like that. But he can fit in a lot of places. He'd be good for a lot of teams. You said San Antonio, he'd be great for San Antonio. I think another team he'd be really good for would be Orlando. I don't know that those teams. I don't know if
their defensive ethos more than the other guys we've mentioned as well. I mean, imagine him help defense next to Franz and Isaac. That's a nightmare.
Yeah, and I don't know that any of these teams will want to play the restricted free agency game for him. I suspect that he already has a deal worked out and in place more or less with Toronto. I think it'll end up being like 4 years, 110 or something like that.
For the same reasons we would assume the Knicks had a deal in place with OG, right?
So I don't think he's going anywhere, but he is obviously a player we both have liked forever, and obviously a player who I think has a game that is very, very malleable and can fit onto almost any team. So I will say Philly, but you could say Orlando, you could say San Antonio, as you said. You could say a lot of teams.
There's one more I'll throw in there too. I think part of his appeal is that he's both great on ball and off ball. And so if he was to play with the greatest wing of the last 20 years in LA, I don't think they can make this happen, but that's interesting if they kept LeBron.
Oh, I thought you were saying the Clippers.
No, the Lakers, yeah, if they kept LeBron.
Well, you said the greatest wing of the last 20 years, so I thought you were going Kawhi.
Ooh. No, actually, I was talking about Paul George.
Yeah, no, actually, I was talking about the Suns.
I was just talking about Kevin Knox.
Yeah, Kevin Knox. Yeah, he can go play in fucking with the G League or whatever the fuck Kevin Knox was telling me last year. Yeah, I mean, he'd be fun in LA. I just said they just have no. They really don't have any realistic path to get him. All right, moving on. Number 13, Nicholas Claxton.
I'd like him in OKC.
This is actually like I think if they're going to go for a big guy, I think Claxton is the guy that suits them more than Hartenstein, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because their defense is so predicated on being able to switch, and Claxton, who I think has been overrated as far as like how good he is an elite switch defender for a big. He is a nightmare for anybody to ISO on. And actually, one thing that has consistently annoyed me over the last 2 years, 3 years, or whatever. Well, it feels like Brunson's been here for 3 years, but 2 years is when we play the Nets. Brunson will always, for some reason, try to draw a switch onto Claxton, and he's like the one guy on their team that can actually defend him. Okay, but yeah, I think Claxton OKC like offensively, like if you're going to move Chet to a totally different position for a significant portion of his minutes, then I think you at least don't want to change your defensive framework, and Claxton would not force them to do that. So I think he would be really, really interesting for them. I think he'd be good in Orlando as well. I think he'd be a good fit for them. Defensively, anyways. Offensively, there'd still be. I mean, their offense is fucking clogged toilet shit. But offensively, or defensively rather, I think he'd be a really strong fit there. I think he's a strong fit in a lot of places defensively because of his ability to switch. And while I don't think he's not a good post defender because he's just not strong enough to hold his position and anchor all the time. He's a really good rim protector. He is a very skilled one at times. And yeah, so I guess I'll say OKC, but I think it could be Orlando as well.
Yeah, I mean, OKC seems like he's the perfect mix. I think some of the problematic things we've talked about with Chet, like you don't really want to move him to the 4, which we'll talk about when we talk about Hartenstein, but also you would like somebody with a little more beef who can rebound. And one of the things that's impressive about Claxton, it's one of the things I've always liked about the Knicks bigs, is that he is both a very good defensive rebounder and he's a very good shot blocker. That's a pretty rare combo if you think about it. And that's the kind of guy you'd probably want around Chet. Can do enough on offense. If I'm trying to think of other teams that he could maybe fit well on, it's an imperfect fit, and you'd have to buy Alperen Şengün being able to shoot at some point. If I was Houston, I would at least put feelers out. I think he's interesting in. I think he's interesting in Minnesota if they somehow decided to move off of Gobert. I think he's like kind of the ideal fit. He's the ideal fit next to any kind of tweener 4 or 5 who can shoot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think he'd be an interesting fit next to Randall. It's not going to happen, obviously. But if I was to pick a team, it would still be Oklahoma City. But and then Philly is going to be in play. Philly's going to be in play for all these guys. I just like Embiid is a tricky feat with a lot of guys. I can see it working with Embiid because he can shoot, but also Embiid's a guy you want close to the rim. And they're not a switchy team in the same way. And that goes for Houston too, right? You're still not going to switch Şengün, so your spacing might be fine if he shoots threes. So I think Oklahoma City, from all those aspects, yeah, I'd have to say that the best fit.
Word. All right. Number 14, Contavious Caldwell Pope. I'm. This is very boring for me. Just staying in Denver is the best
Yeah.
fit for him.
I was still gonna say too.
I don't see any place that's better for him than that. It depends on.
I mean,
if I
every
work-
contender can use a 3-and-D guy like that. Besides, I guess us. But
even us, we could use him if you were just like, hey, do you want Contavious Caldwell Pope? It'd be like
like, whose minutes he's taking?
bogey.
Right. Oh yeah, but I mean, he's probably overqualified for that role, right? Bogey gets 12.
Of course, yeah, of course. I'm just saying, like, he's a guy. I'd be like, yeah,
You wouldn't want him to take Hart's minutes, and he's probably too overqualified for Bogey's minutes. So
we'll see. But I just don't think there's any. Denver's perfect for him.
yeah,
He's perfect there. He doesn't have to up his usage. He can kind of do his KCP thing. Yeah, it's a good fit. Number 15, before we get to our boy. This one's interesting. Klay Thompson.
Can I also say I'd rank number 16 above a few of these guys?
Yes, I look. I said Hoops Hype rankings. Not sure the order they got is correct, but we have to go until we get to Hartenstein, and we will be there shortly. But I think fifth. So anyway, 15, Klay Thompson.
Bones Island has a club option, so he'll likely be a free agent too. So we should talk about him. Klay Thompson. I feel like that's a guy that gets a lot of calls to the Knicks. Honestly, like it seems like LA. If he really wants to leave Golden State, which I don't think I think it is Golden State. Maybe like I don't think the guy is itching for another ring. I don't really know what plays Golden State will make. I would see them making a mutual thing where he's going to take less money to help them get to the extent they might have some maneuverability, and he can help them do that by taking a lesser deal. I think that happens. If not that, I think it's LA. But like, yeah, like you can say Philly has cap space. Oh, everyone can use a shooter. You're seeing how much perimeter defense matters in the East, especially. You can talk about the West and it's being better. But Boston kind of showed you need to be able to switch. We showed that, right, against Philly. We ruthlessly attacked Maxey. We ruthlessly attacked Halliburton. Well, the injury, it was going to work. The only team I think it wouldn't have worked against was Boston, even at full strength, which is why I do think probably 6 or 7 games we would have lost to Boston. But the East has guards up and down who can hunt those mismatches. And Klay Thompson, is he willing to play a Bogdanovich role? If so, he's going to be paid like it. Then just go back to Golden State. Finish your career where you started, and help them. I think it's still Golden State.
I tend to agree that it is Golden State, but if I'm him, I've won my championships. I won 4 championships, so I don't need to I'm not ring chasing, right?
You've also made a lot of money.
I've made a lot of money, but I've won my championships. So if now I'm playing purely because I still can't play and because I want to make as much money as I can before I get the fuck out of this league, I don't know what Golden State's offering him. I'm sure Golden State would pay him a solid number. I don't think they would pay him. They're not going to pay him anything close to what he made this past season. Last year he made $43.2 million. He's not sniffing that type of money ever again in a single season. But I mean, I feel like we end up picking the same teams all the time, but wouldn't he be awesome in Orlando? He'd be good in Orlando, but we talked about Zion, he'd be fucking awesome playing off of Zion, dude. He'd be amazing. He'd be like, oh, hey, this is a different thing than playing off of Steph, but I still get wide open threes all the time.
Do you think they need another creator though, especially if Ingram's going? And
I actually don't know. I mean, yes, they do in the long run, but I also just think they need to make it such a priority to just be like, we just need to put amazing spacing next to Zion, around Zion. They need to get up more threes also, and we know Klay Thompson's gonna get threes up. I think he'd be awesome there, and in the sense of hey, you know what? New Orleans was a better basketball team this past season than Golden State. And they're young. And they have guys that are still improving, right?
Zion. But he's also, I don't know what his family situation is like, but that may be more of a consideration for older players, right? So
it could be, but he's not married. so I don't think he's got that to worry about. He's just married to the game. But like, I don't know. I think New Orleans would be really fucking fun for him, and they're still good. Like, they're not a bad team, so he could go there and be like, "Hey, I'm here to like show you guys how to win and all that type of bullshit." Do what it takes. But like, he would be fucking awesome next to Zion, man. I think he'd be really good.
Why not Oklahoma City then? For the same reasons.
I'm not sure they need as much standstill 3-point shooting. Although I guess maybe they do, because their 3-point shooters kind of shit the bed against Dallas. So maybe these, I mean, especially a guy like Lou Dort, to me, his 3-point percentage was always fake in the regular season.
But you can't really take him off the floor, right? He's their best defensive player.
I think you can take him off the floor. I'm not a Lou.
I mean, but then you're asking Jalen Williams would be their next option as a perimeter defender, unless you want to trust SGA, but he's going to carry a heavy offensive load. So it is like Josh Hart.
Get rid of Giddey, put Casey Wallace on the floor.
Undersized, but
yeah, I mean, that's part of it. But like, I don't know. I just think, but like that none of that will exist in New Orleans, right? Like, Trey Murphy's big, Herb Jones. No, Herb Jones. Herb Jones is like, he obviously can defend a lot of positions and a lot of players. If they really wanted to like go protect, defensively, you can have Dyson Daniels on the floor. They have a lot of options. Alvarado's a pretty good defender, even though he's undersized. And they've also
Zion is switchable.
Yeah. Well, they've also just been a good defense, despite a lot of guys that you would say are not good defenders, right? Like Zion and Valanciunas and CJ. Like, they've been a good defensive team for 2 years running, a really good defensive team for 2 years running. So I'll say New Orleans.
Yeah, I think outside Golden State, I would say them. Yeah. And in many ways, it just feels like he could be a Laker.
Yeah, he'd be kind of fun in Sacramento too. I'll say that.
Yeah, but he's not really what they need.
No, he's not what they need.
But if they're going to lose Monk, then he's a good replacement, right? So
yes. All right. We're going to close with this one. Number 16, our guy, Isaiah Hartenstein.
The best fit?
Yeah, the best fit.
New York, concrete jungle where dreams are made.
I think it is his best fit. Like, I actually don't even think that's like some homer hot take. I genuinely think this is like the best fit for him.
So we've talked about this, where I think it's very striking that they didn't play Chet at all at the 5, like 0% of his minutes. I think Randall has gotten 1%, 2% of his minutes at the 5 most seasons. So that tells you, and that is not something Tibbs ever wants to do. So the fact they didn't do it at all, maybe they're worried about his health, says that is not something of an option they're looking at near term.
Well, if you're worried about his health, wouldn't you want to play him less of the 5 sometimes?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, maybe kind of switchability. The way that 5s play these days, you're defending more pick and roll. Like, you might see some more post-ups to the 4, but, they didn't do it this season at all, right? It's 0%. That is very striking. I would, but I think where I disagree with you is the idea that like Oklahoma City just is like, we're never going to take a non-shooting 5. So I do think it matters that Presti gave Steven Adams a fuck ton of money. It was 4 for 100 8 years ago. You can say it was a different NBA, but that's way more money than they would have to pay Hartenstein today. So I think that if they really valued Hartenstein, that part of it would not turn them off. I do think it means a lot, though, that it seems like they're prioritizing him at the 5. And, Randall's a guy I think that would fit there perfectly. I don't think there's a trade that makes that happen. But I would assume that to kind of shore up the rebounding and maybe some of the physicality issues they dealt with, they would probably go for a more physical 4. A guy like Marcus Morris, maybe. Lower cost option. If they wanted to pay up, obviously they could go for a guy like LeBron. But I think, like, while I would play devil's advocate and say I don't think they're as opposed to signing a traditional 5 in the vein of Hartenstein as you think so, I do think that ultimately the fact that they never played Chet there matters.
Yeah, they never played Chet there. They spent the last 3 years they've had fucking 50 billion since the 2020 draft, right? Where they've had a billion picks. They've never drafted a 5 that cannot shoot, or at least that they think can shoot or has the potential to shoot. Like they took Poku, right? I think they played Poku at the 5 a bunch, if I remember correctly. Like
They were tanking. They were
but
tanking. That is another point that Omar brought up in the Strickland.
But I don't think that matters. Like, because to me, like you can tank but still play guys that because you're building. They're not a dumb team, right? Whatever I think about Presti, they're not a stupid team. Like he's clearly, even when his rebuilding phase, even when they're obviously tanking, they're putting guys on the floor that do things and play the way that they ideally ultimately want to play, just with better players. Like, so they got Mike Muscala, right? He's not good, but he can be the stretch 5 type of guy. They just prioritize that stuff, and they always get guys that if they hit or if they develop the way they want them to develop, will play the way they want to, right? Like,
do you think it matters that Hartenstein? We've talked about this. Obviously, he doesn't take threes, but functionally, he gives you a lot more spacing than a guy like Mitchell Robinson. In that sense, because he can pass, he can operate from the perimeter. Like, you can't just leave him alone out there, right? So
no, you can't. But I think it's like we're comparing him to Mitchell Robinson, so it's a very different thing. Whereas they would be like, well, we're playing like, yeah, it's fun. It's cool to be like, well, you don't need to be able to shoot to play 5 out, and I do get that to an extent, but like we also know there's a very big difference between Kristaps Porzingis and Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, there's a very big difference between what those guys are doing.
But you also don't really want. I mean, did the Celtics play Porzingis full time at the 5?
Yes,
they played him a lot at the 4, right?
No, I'll look it up right now. I would be shocked if he played anything more than like 3 or 4% of his minutes at the 4.
3 or 4. Oh wow! But Horford played a lot, didn't he?
Yeah, but he was playing as a 5. They didn't play him with Porzingis. Porzingis played 95% of his minutes at the 5 this year.
And AD plays at the 5, and he's obviously not even that kind of
spacer. Yeah, he's not even that kind of spacer. But like, I just think there's a different level of space. And like AD, you wouldn't say is a 5 out. Like, he's not a stretch 5, even though he gives you better spacing than Mitchell Robinson, obviously.
I don't think Mitchell Robinson is low end necessarily. I mean, Mitchell Robinson is low end, but that's close to the median. Like, most centers are not giving you much spacing.
Right. Like, that's why those guys that can are like extremely rare, right? There's like a handful of them in the league. And it's why Memphis tried with Jaren Jackson, but he can't rebound for shit. So, and he's a fucking disaster in terms of picking up fouls at the 5. So yeah, I do think it's New York. I really do. I think.
Do you think it could work more? Do you think the same arguments apply with Wemby and San Antonio, and why San Antonio would not go for Hartenstein?
Yeah, I don't think they would.
Like, and they also want.
Also, the other part of this is like they extended, for whatever reason, they agreed to an extension with Zach Collins last year for 2 years, $35 million, and that kicks in this upcoming season. So they're going to now pay Hartenstein $20 million a year. They're going to commit $37.5 million to 2 guys at the 5, when we already know, and they know, that Wemby's long-term position, his best position, maybe not even his long-term, maybe his best position right now is the 5. I mean, it was this year. I don't see it. Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll break in half. But yeah, he'll probably get better. Wemby will probably get better at basketball.
Yeah, I mean, other teams with cap space, Philly obviously already has a center.
Orlando's the other one. I don't think Hartenstein. I think Hartenstein will be good for any team he goes to, but I don't think he would be as good himself in Orlando as he is in New York. Because
do you think his playmaking would help them? Because they are lacking that a little bit, right?
But I think he would help, but I don't think you're getting the best out of his playmaking unless you're making big time, another big and a couple of big additions on the perimeter. Like, I just think, as good a playmaker as Hartenstein is, I still think that he playmakes off of the advantages created for him more than throw him the rock.
Who does Paolo Banchero compare to the most, besides Carmelo Anthony?
Oh, I don't know.
He gets compared to Randall a lot. That was his comp out of college.
Really?
It's the lefty thing. It's the midi thing.
Paolo's a righty, though.
I mean, it's the style he plays, right? Mid-range.
Yeah, I don't personally. I think Randall was a fucking bull getting to the rim when he was young, and he was this year again too.
I mean, Paolo's pretty physical. Like
He is, but
it's
I don't
kind
think
of
it's the
the
same.
the
I don't think
mid
it's the
like
same.
the style of play.
Yeah, I
We
get it.
believe
Yeah.
Hartenstein unlocks a lot for Randall. I think you believe that, right? I think it's why most people still prefer him to Mitch, all things equal. Now the salary plays kind of a role there. If you think that he could unlock things for, and I do think with Paolo, it's a tricky fit because he is a little bit of a tweener big. You probably want him next to a center who can unlock those things rather than a Mitchell Robinson type, right? So I think that is not the easiest archetype to find either, by the way.
Well, does Hartenstein unlock things for Randall independent of everything else, or does he unlock things for Randall because we have a guard like Brunson who naturally opens up the floor in a lot of different ways?
It plays into it, but I think all things equal, again, you'd prefer Hartenstein, a guy who can operate from the top of the key, who can unlock the little cutting that Randall does. You can work him off DHOs. He doesn't have to be in the paint. That in itself alone makes a big deal. When Randall, like, how many times do we see Randall dump the ball off to Mitchell Robinson, and Mitchell Robinson can't catch it in traffic? Hartenstein can catch in traffic. Hartenstein, on the inverse, can also catch from that little 10-foot area and make that contested floater. Those little things make a lot of difference for a guy who, when he's constantly driving, those passes are in narrow windows with small opportunities. A guy who can convert on those, that matters a lot.
Yeah, I agree. But what we're saying, both saying Knicks.
Over Orlando, yeah. I mean, it's also. He's a perfect fit here. Like he gets to play next to you. You mentioned this, right? Obviously, unlocking Paolo is one thing, but he gets to unlock Brunson here. He unlocked Brunson a lot. Not that Brunson needed it, but they have perfect chemistry. He's obviously very comfortable with the team here. He fits the ethos. They want to crash the glass. Imagine if he goes to a team where they're like, we want to get back on defense. You're losing one of. I mean, we probably underrate his offensive rebounding just because of how good Mitchell Robinson is. But even guys like Hartenstein is right up there in terms of how they prioritize the glass, his defensive rebounding, and the fact that with OG here, they're able to get away with the fact that he's not ideal on the perimeter. Like he's a solid perimeter defender, but you really want him on drop, and the Knicks are able to make that happen with one having pretty good perimeter defenders besides Brunson out there, and good help defenders. So or when they don't play drop because they have good help defenders, the kind of margin of error he has to recover on a rolling big is a little bit higher when you have OG as the tagger or you have Hart as the tagger. So from a basketball standpoint, it's the ideal fit. If he's really going to get $100 million elsewhere, though, you can't blame him. So,
yeah, I agree. All right, I think we're gonna end it there. Stacy, let people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
You can find me at StacyPatton89 and the NBA draft, which we didn't talk about tonight, but I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot of pods coming up. Is coming up, and Prez and everybody at the Strickland has got you covered with lots of previews. Knicks have 3 picks in the first 40 this year. Whatever they decide to do should be very interesting night, and I would recommend definitely bonesing up on all the potential prospects, just like I bonesed up on Highland a few years ago, but we ended up taking Deuce, and that ended it well.
Awesome. I'm going to plug myself, so I will plug all the work that Strickland. Check out the draft stuff that Prez is producing that all these people are doing. Check out the work that Miranda has done. And yeah, check out the different pods that we're putting out. Still a lot of content that's coming out there. Like I said, Con put out a Strictly NFL last week. We had to take some obvious bozos from Drew and Zach that dropped, I think it was earlier this week or maybe it was last week. Everything's blending together. I have nothing to plug personally, so check out all that stuff. Aside from that, got nothing. So everybody have a great rest of your week. We'll be back. I'll be back on Friday with Prez. We'll see what happens in the NBA Finals up until then. I will talk about that then, maybe. I don't know. I don't really care about the finals because both these teams suck and I hate them. All right. That's our show for today. Thank you to our sponsor, BetOnline, and I will see you on Friday.